Thank you so much, Henry. Indeed, this is the discussion that we need to continue. And we will during the next 4 days of the Global Webit Impact Week. But there is one thing that has true impact over the future, the desirable future of the humankind. And this is one word: education. And here we are, coming up next with a discussion on education development as a long-term force for change. And we have the senior producer of CNN, Christina Zdanowicz, here with us. Please, Christina, introduce the panel.
Hello, and welcome to a panel discussion about the future of education and the push for long-term change. I'm Christina Zdanowicz. I'm a senior producer at CNN Digital, and I'm also the board chair for a youth development nonprofit for teens called Vox ATL. I'm your moderator for today. Thank you for joining. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen so many things change, from educators trying to teach their students virtually and adapt to those changes, to the gap that we're seeing in learning from students basically across the globe. Our goal with our time today is to see if we can take some of the lessons that we learned from the pandemic and elsewhere and try to see if we can take education into the future, at least in this short conversation. I'd like to introduce each of our panelists today. We hail from around the world, which is pretty amazing. Welcome to Wendy Kopp, who serves as the CEO and co-founder for Teach for All, which is a global network of organizations working to make sure that kids have the opportunity to reach their potential. We also have Gabriel Dalporto, who is the CEO at Udacity, which is a company whose mission it is to train workers for the future with everything from cloud computing to programming. Also joining us is Yoshito Hori, the founder and president of GLOBIS University, which happens to be the #1 business school in Japan. And our final panelist is Professor Sara Nosari, who studies general and social education at the University of Turin. And for anybody watching, just as a reminder, if anybody has thoughts or questions, you can share them on social media by using the hashtag Webit. And thank you for joining us. To start things off, I'd like to ask our panelists to think about the bird's eye view, the big picture view of education. And this is a question for any of you, so feel free to jump in if you're so moved. The past year and a half has changed a lot in the education world. What major shifts have you seen, and what have been the positive and negative effects of the COVID pandemic and lockdowns?
Hi, this is Gabe Dalporto. First, let me say that I come at this from a lens of training the world's workforce on the careers of the future, so generally post K-12 education. I'd say one of the major things I've seen on the positive side of the pandemic and COVID is it has taught the world that remote work is possible, and these jobs are now accessible to people living outside major economic centers like Silicon Valley, New York, London. People living in rural areas in lower income countries now have the opportunity to access higher paying jobs. A positive and a negative, though, is that COVID is also accelerating a massive shift away from traditional jobs and into skills, digital skills. Is positive because these new jobs are typically high paying and rewarding, but negative because it's creating massive skill gaps, disproportionately affecting lower income people. So you have, on the one hand, the access to all these new great digital jobs. On the other hand, many of the people who are disadvantaged already don't have access to the skill retraining. And that's where I think the educational sector has a huge part to play in a pivotal moment in history in terms of how do we get people the skills of the future so we can really break down these societal inequalities.
And I can speak from the perspective of, well, younger kids. Our network works with some of the most marginalized students across 61 countries who are, pre-K to 12. And what we've seen in this era is that, of course, on the one hand, the most marginalized students in the world were the least likely to even be in safe spaces and have access to adequate food and water and healthcare, let alone access to ongoing learning opportunities. At the same time, on the other hand, already the system was not serving the students we're reaching well. And what we've seen as the world's educators, stepped out of the box of what we knew as school to resort to many things to keep kids learning is lots of new possibilities that we actually think if we can sustain and spread them could actually speed up progress towards the education system we're working towards, which is one that actually develops students as leaders who can actually navigate uncertainty and shape a better future for themselves and for all of us. And some of those possibilities are, first of all, teachers partnering with students and with families much more equally in shaping the learning experience, just flipping the dynamic that we've seen we've seen historically between teachers and students, which in and of itself has so much promise. We've seen teachers integrating social emotional development and a concern for students' well-being at every turn. And we know that's so crucial for the system that we need. We've seen teachers get over the kind of worldwide inertia around leveraging technology and see how much it can do to make teaching and learning more easier and more accessible. And finally, we've seen teachers enlisting kids and leading today and solving problems that exist in schools and in communities. So we're, on the one hand, want to stay centered in the fact that this generation is facing even more significant challenges than they were 2 years ago. But on the other hand, in the new possibilities and opportunities that exist that could actually put this generation and generations to come on a path to thriving and to leading the future.
My view is that the time has accelerated drastically, and the future has come 20 or 10 years earlier than expected. GLOBIS runs business school in Japan, both online and in person. I'll give you the number, what happened. Last year in February, we had 85% in person, 15% online MBA students. In April, it has become 100% online. And now we see 60% online and 40% in person. So it has drastically changed. And then global MBA has also accelerated in terms of enrollment because we provide both online and also in-person capability. And actually the number of the subscription of micro-learning in February 2020, the number from 2020 April to 2020 February to April, the number has doubled, and now it has also again doubled. So I can see that we haven't expected this kind of change to happen in short period of time. So my view is that the future had come earlier than expected, 10 or 20 years, and people have become so much used to using online and learning, and also faculty, staffs, and students as well. And however, the negative side is that the connection between the students have become deteriorated.
From my point of view, I think that it's not easy to answer. Thinking about the positive effects, I believe that the pandemic has offered everyone the opportunity to deal with the digital space. The digital experience is creating a digital habit that could change, that could truly and irreversibly change the way of conceiving personal identity, relationship, social and economic policies. We are all creating this change every day. So we all have a responsibility to make this change. The most important challenge will be investing digital opportunities to create a better world, a more supportive, fairer, happier world, not just faster, more efficient, and safer. As for negative effects, in my opinion, there is not enough distance to evaluate. The pandemic is a truly new experience. However, it's evident that human beings had to rediscover the necessity to know how to wait. Perhaps the pandemic is normalizing our way of life. I don't know if this is a positive or negative effect, but I think that this normalization could offer an important occasion of change.
Wow, we just covered a lot of ground there in one answer. I mean, yeah, how do you sum up what happened in the past, 22 months? It's pretty difficult to do, but I think it leads into our next question, which is, do you think that the current education system as it is, really responds to the needs of society? And how do you think the system needs to transform and innovate in order to follow the needs of the students in the future, whether it's now as we're still in the pandemic or, in a few years or beyond that? And I'll invite maybe two of you to speak, but feel free to jump in if you're so moved.
I'll jump in and say that I think we're in serious need of stepping back and reconsidering the very purpose of education. I think our educators are kind of working within a box that was created just, hundreds of years ago when the world was very different. And we really need to step back and consider what we're working towards. Across our network, we did that about 5 years ago. We asked ourselves, what are we trying to accomplish by 25 years from now? And it led us to really look at where the world would be in 25 years and just considering how much the economy is changing, how much the planet is degrading, the increasing polarization in the world and all the increasingly complex challenges. We came to see more clearly than ever that we must be working to develop students as leaders who can navigate the changing economy, solve these increasingly complex problems, and ultimately shape a better future for themselves and for all of us. And from that redefined purpose, you realize everything needs to change. And we've been on such a journey since then of realizing, what does that mean for the outcomes we're working towards, for how we need to train and support our teachers? And I mean, that's only the beginning of the massive changes that would need to take place if we were truly oriented towards that purpose.
In my opinion, school is one of the great ideas that allows us to design a new and better, above all, better society. By designing a new society, the educational system has a double function: to conserve and innovate. For this reason, the school cannot be a system of method and practices simply to be applied and replicated. There may be different ways of responding to needs, but they depend on individual situations. It must be said that the school is an open system committed to a continuous and constant review. Being part of society and having to respond to its real and concrete needs, the school is a creative system. That is a system that researches and reforms to propose efficient and meaningful change projects. Having to research and reform the educational system needs time to experiment, time to modify, time to evaluate. The educational system doesn't follow and must not follow a production logic. Consequently, in order to follow the needs of children now and the future, my suggestion is that the educational system works on experience and through experience. Knowledge and skills must have a meaning for life. I don't mean that they must have a usefulness, but I mean that every knowledge and every skill must be recognized as valid because it is an experience and an expression of human history.
Thank you for all that. I think that what's interesting about this, it's like we're talking about all these big picture views about what's broken in the educational system worldwide, but then at the same time, there must be some smaller things that we can do to try to, you know, better the next generation, better students, better adults who want to learn. So now I'm curious to drill down to some specifics. I wanted to hear from Yoshito. What are the latest initiatives and things that you guys are working on and supporting? And then part two, how do you think that investing in educational development can play a big role in the future of making change in the system?
Thank you, Christina. I actually run or founded a venture capital firm in Japan. So I have two caps. One is a president of university. The other cap is a founding partner of venture capital. I've been investing for 25 years, and I saw a drastic changes happening in every sectors. And that is the champion has changed because of technology. It used to be Sears, now it's Amazon. It used to be TV, but now it's Netflix or YouTube. Or it used to be taxis, but now it's Uber. So everything has become more software and online. I predict the same things will happen in education. So it used to be Harvard, maybe in the future could be GLOBIS or maybe Udacity. So the changes will happen because of technology. That means educational institution has to be capable of having the engineering capability. In case of GLOBIS, we have more than 100 engineers hired in just 2 or 3 years. And we have shifted everything online and also more to subscription model. So I said in the beginning that the time has accelerated and then the future has come 20 or 10 years earlier than expected. That means the speed to change has been accelerated. The beauty of technology is that students can use either online or in person. They can choose and they can shift it quite drastically and changing. And because of technology, anybody from the US can join Japanese business school, sometimes online. And if they wish, they can come to Japan and study full-time MBA in person. And so the education will start, I predict will start from smartphone because smartphone is the easiest way to get education. So it has become more accessible. And at the same time, it will become more contents using AI and artificial intelligence for education. And it will become more and more mass customization, not like a mass production or mass education. And and then it will be using more and more video and animation and slideshow so that is becoming more and more user friendly. And it will become more of the platform. And that's what we see is going to happen. So it's not just education in a smartphone, but it's going to be, I predict that degree will come like MBA from smartphone and online plus also in person. So the selection has become wider. The more option means the more user friendly. And that's what I see is going to happen in every sector of education. So in conclusion, education becomes software or it's become more and more like an online education. And that future is becoming earlier materialized now because of COVID-19.
I mean, I think, yeah, like what you're saying about AI and the platform just becoming more and more important and, you know, maybe less of the being in person part, which is certainly very valuable, especially when you're talking about young children or, you know, people who just learn better in that environment. But the growth really does seem to be in these online communities. And in mentioning AI, it's definitely time to ask Gabriel a question, because this is your world. You are teaching the future of careers and all these different things that most people don't know how to do. So what are some of the latest innovations and programs and classes that you guys are doing in AI, cybersecurity, and more? And where does the demand seem to be? Where's the biggest demand since the pandemic started? What's the most popular?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was actually speaking with the Chief Information Security Officer from a top 10 US bank recently, and she told me, and I'm quoting, "We are in an all-out war for cybersecurity talent and we're losing." And what's going on here is that 82% of Global 2000 companies can't fill their current jobs because the talent doesn't exist. And that's really what Udacity is here to do, to manufacture that talent in areas like data, AI, cybersecurity, cloud computing, autonomous systems, self-driving cars, things like that. So we recently launched a school of cybersecurity, and that was really to attack what this CSO was talking about, which is there's just this exploding demand in cybersecurity. So you can learn everything from entry level cybersecurity skills all the way up to cybersecurity analysts and ethical hackers. And so you can kind of create your own career path, if you will. The great thing about these programs is they typically are called 3 to 5 months, 10 to 15 hours a week on your own pace. And you come out of the programs having actually done the job. So in our self-driving car engineer course, which we co-created with Waymo, to graduate from the program, you have to upload your code into Udacity's self-driving car, and using your code, it drives around a course, stops on red, goes on green, doesn't hit stuff. So you're developing those real practitioner level skills. But I'd say probably one of the most innovative things we've done recently isn't necessarily in the curriculum. We continue to expand our curriculum, and data is the one area, I think, where there is universal demand. But really, when we thought about how to have impact and not just great curriculum, we really came back to the fact that you need to be more than just a learning platform. You need to be more than just a place to put online videos. You have to really focus on what we call radical transformation platform, which means think about how do you get people graduated and in those new jobs, and the entire infrastructure built around it. And so just if you put a bunch of videos online and you hope for the best, you typically get 5 or 10% graduation rates and very little, tangible outcomes. So we've worked with Global 2000 companies and nations to reskill, thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people at a time, but taking a 4-part approach. One is like starting with the endpoint in mind, like what are you trying to get to? What's your vision for the talent you're trying to deploy? What type of skills they actually need to be able to do? Assessing your current population. So where are they today? So not just assuming they're at A and then taking them to B, but one student may go from A to C and another from B to D. And then the third piece is really creating a structured program management infrastructure around it, where you onboard students in cohorts, you run them through with a lot of support networks, and then finally tying it to deploying into actual jobs and measuring actual outcomes. So that infrastructure actually is as important or more important as the curriculum itself. And when you put it together, that's how you get outcomes at scale in very short periods of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the teaching, but it's the infrastructure. It's making sure that everything's working. It's making sure that things are being done in a mindful way. That makes so much sense. And then learning how to drive how to operate a self-driving car. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. That's pretty futuristic to me, also in the now, right? I want to deviate a little bit and think about creativity, which I know that Sara is something that she really studies and focuses on. And some would say that creativity is really the key to the future. And I'm just wondering, Sara, what is your idea of creativity? And then how do you teach creativity to people? Can that really be taught?
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, because I spent a lot of time studying creativity. And creativity is one of main causes of change and one of principal factors of building and the transformation of the community. The creative action advances in any direction, and everything would look open to have a creative version. But because there is a but, I agree with the authors who think that it is a brain teaser. Creativity is really a brain teaser. Creativity involves a pending issue. What is creativity? This is a pending issue. What does creativity mean? I can prove this pending nature with a simple test. Grab some item on your desk. I have here on my desk many objects. I can take this gold pen and is this creative? When can we attribute the quality of creative? Creative can mean fantasy, novelty, divergence, personality, productivity, freedom, progress, tragedy, oddity, disobedience, invention, improvisation. We could go on, and please go on. What is creativity is not a useless or marginal question. It is a critical question. If we don't define creativity, everything can be or become creative. That is, nothing can really be or become creative. This theoretical approximation causes disorientation. Now, I certainly don't want to solve this problem, this pending issue, but I want to propose to interpret creativity according to different ways: an instrumental way and an orientative way. The first version is a functional operation aimed to a product. The second way is an ethical operation engaged to testify the direction of change. This is not, I have to mark this point, this is not an alternative. We have not to make a choice. It's important to recognize that creativity has two versions and that it is necessary to synthesize these ways. On the education of creativity, this is my suggestion. It's important to exercise and improve these synthesizing approaches, but by exercising and improving the problematizing skill. We can use for this improvement the pretest device. The pretest device aims to raise and generate questions through a suspended situation. The combination of situation and suspension involves the participant in a questioning activity. The pretext gives the possibility to reflect, search, and replay. The pretext acts as a stumbling block, a trap, a labyrinth. But this is my final point. The device is the device of the pretext forces to confront the situations, habit to seeing educational opportunities in the situation, forms the posture to look at situation as opportunity for an educational intervention. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think creativity is really at the center of a lot of things that we do as humans. And I'd be curious to hear from Wendy I'm sure creativity plays into your answer on this next question, but I was wondering about zooming out again, like what is your approach to building a pipeline of future, education leaders around the world, and does creativity roll into that as well?
Well, across the Teach for All network, we're working to essentially develop what we call collective leadership to ensure all kids fulfill their potential and can, as we said before, shape a better future, which of course does involve creativity. I mean, we would say it involves, fostering students' sense of agency, their awareness of the world and of themselves and of their backgrounds. It involves fostering their sense of well-being and strength, their sense of kind of connectedness and ability to work with others across lines of difference. And of course, kind of their mastery of the kind of academic knowledge and skills that will enable them to solve problems, to identify new opportunities and such. And I think it's all of those things coming together that will enable our students to be the creative problem solvers they need. But if we're going to reinvent the system towards that kind of broader set of outcomes, it will take leadership at every level. And that's where this notion of collective leadership comes from. We need students and their parents and educators at every level of the system, and policymakers and others really working to reinvent the system towards this very different purpose than we've been oriented towards. And so all of these network organizations are recruiting some of the most promising leaders in their countries of all different backgrounds academically and of career interests, and asking them initially to commit to teach in some of the most marginalized communities. They invest a lot in the development of those teachers, knowing that that's really important for kids in their classrooms, and also knowing that foundational experience of teaching will inform a lifetime of leadership. I'll just say, we've all seen the power of technology, and clearly we need to do a lot to enable all of the world's people and kids and families, to benefit from that. And we're far from where we need to be. I will say that I think what we've seen more than anything, though, is that what differentiated whether kids kept learning and stayed engaged during this era or not was so much about the people factor. It was about whether they had a teacher, a school leader, others who were just exerting leadership to leverage whatever the available resources were, whatever the form of technology or not, and to keep kids learning. And it will be the same ingredient that enables us to both maximize technology over time, to reinvent the system. And so I hope we'll just really prioritize at a different level the development of essentially the leadership capacity necessary to reinvent the education system so that we can reinvent the world.
I think a lot of what you're saying naturally fits in with kind of where I want us to, talk about at the end here. Like, I'm wondering, and this is open to any of you, like what skills or characteristics do you think our children most need to be able to be ready for the future and make it a better place? And then also, what skills do you think our teachers need to be able to teach our kids this and to be able to succeed?
Let me jump in. I have 5 kids. And they all happen to be boys. And at the same time, I founded university. Therefore, I've been thinking about that question for a long time. And because of AI and the advancement of technology, I think the education has to be drastically changed. However, I think 3 skills are going to be needed for the future and also for my kids. I summarize. 1 is philosophy. 2nd is about entrepreneurship. 3rd is about what I call technobit. I like to talk about a little bit deeper into each one of it. Philosophy means the time is come for metaverse and virtual reality and augmented reality. So people will lose identity as to where we are and why are we born and what are we doing for. And this is a personal mission. We call it kokorozashi in Japanese. And then the identity is going to be needed for the passion and also for determination to do things and to know about what is going on. So philosophical question about why are we born and what are we going to use our life for is going to be important. That's one thing. Second is about entrepreneurship. In the future, the decision will be made by AI, and also most of the jobs will be done by AI and robotics. So the human will have to be able to deal with more creativity, innovation, and create the future that cannot be done by AI and robotics. And therefore, it's more about leadership, more about communication, more about motivating people. And that's going to be needed for the future case. Third thing is technovate. I'm not sure whether you know about the word technovate. And I don't think that many of you know it simply because I made up this word, technovate. I had a copyright for it. And technovate stands for technovate, innovate. So it's called technovate. And the meaning of technovate is that the future, it's important to use AI and robotics. And in order to use AI and robotics, you have to have the ability to understand technology innovation. And that's going to be the key. So whoever is capable of adapting and adopting technology with AI and robotics will be able to be the next champion. So that I think is going to be technovate. So 3 skills that I hope that my kids will be furnished with. One is philosophy. Second is entrepreneurship. And third is technovate.
Yoshi, I couldn't agree more. And with you and Viola on the creativity aspects, I mean, AI is going to automate everything, including a lot of decision-making and complex problem solving. And creativity is really what humans do uniquely well, that bots don't. But let me shift gears and talk about an important thing we haven't spoken about, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think we're coming at it from the lens of people with 4-year degrees, with lots of resources. 75% of the people in the United States don't have a 4-year degree, right? So what do we do with them in a world where everything becomes automated? And so DEI is an important mission at Udacity. How do we find solutions to help the other 75% of people get into tech-forward jobs and let them innovate, become entrepreneurs, deploy technology skills without $200,000 and 4 years out of their life, which is just not approachable to a lot of people. And so, for example, Black individuals comprise only 3% of employees at the top 75 Silicon Valley tech companies, compared to 13% of the US workforce, right? So this is a problem. What do you do about that? For too long, our answer to racial and social inequality has been go to college. Well, it just doesn't work for some people. So we need short-term practical solutions to get everyone, not just the elite, of which I'm part and all of us are part of. How do we get them employable job skills in 4, 5, 6 months and get them on their way? So we decided to do something about it. We partnered with a phenomenal organization called 110 to provide scholarships to Black individuals without a 4-year degree and to connect them to employment at leading companies. And this is the type of initiative where in a short period of time, you can give people real job skills, get them deployed, making money in the tech economy so they can be entrepreneurial, so they can deploy these tech skills, so they can earn good living wages and break this cycle of poverty. We can't just have education for the top 25%. It really needs to be much broader.
Well, to answer, I'd need to take a step back to focus our attention on the task of education. We can present many and different ideas on the task of education. My position is that its task is firstly to direct change toward a continuous improvement of living conditions, personal conditions, social conditions, political and economic conditions. But there is another but in my presentation. In the same time, education has another task. The task to keep the direction, or rather, the task of education is that everyone is committed to keeping the direction. This is the difficult and hard task of education. Currently, keeping direction is more difficult because current changes stage-specific connotation has such as acceleration and complexity. These conditions require specific skills to keep direction and to testify to it in every situation. The skill we need, in my opinion, is a reflective creativity. So this is my answer. What do our children need in order to make the world a better place? I think that our children need to become capable of reflective creativity. This is a particular skill that combines two abilities: the ability to transform and the ability to judge. Reflective creativity implies, first of all, the ability to transform. That is, the ability to look at reality not as it is, but as it could become. Then, reflective creativity implies the ability to judge. Keeping direction requires a continuous judgment that recognizes and choose the transformation that confirms direction. And education has to exercise children in this skill. They have to become responsible change makers.
Teach for All, I mean, just to your question around what teacher capabilities we need in order to actually develop students as creative problem solvers and as people who can solve the problems of the future, we've done a number of studies across our network, just looking at what is it that differentiates the teachers who are fostering their students' agency and problem solving ability and such. And what we've seen is that the most striking difference in these teachers is actually in their mindsets. It's first of all, their orientation towards a different purpose than most of our education is oriented towards, but it's the fact that they view their students as whole people with the capability for leadership. They see, and many things that emerge from that, like they see themselves as people who can learn alongside their students rather than as the people with all the knowledge. They see the communities in which they're working, some of the most marginalized communities in the world, again, but as power, as assets, as people who can be leveraged in this process. And when they see challenges pop up in their classrooms and communities, they see them as systemic and not as problems inherent in the people they're working with. So I think we need to start developing our teachers, starting with helping us unlearn the mindsets we've all learned in our own education systems and relearn a new set of mindsets, and that the teacher actions that we need ultimately flow from there.
Thanks, Wendy. There's so much to talk about on this question, but unfortunately we've run out of time, and I didn't think that we were going to solve all the world's educational problems, the massive equity gaps, the lack of technology that's prevalent in the US, at least for some communities and really around the world as well. There's a lot that we need to figure out. But I'm so glad that you were all able to join me here today and to talk about this very important issue, and hopefully for everyone to be inspired to try to think what we can do as small next steps as part of the bigger picture in terms of changing the education system. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day.